Joining us now is Ahmed Shuja Jamal. He's co-author of The Decline and Fall of Republican Afghanistan. Thank you, sir, for joining the program. What is different between us and Ukrainian children? I'm going to ask you that question in a minute. But first, give us some context here. Who are the Hazaras? Is there persecution on religious grounds?
Well, thank you, first of all, for offering coverage to this very important issue that is unfolding before our eyes with respect to Hazaras from Afghanistan and also Hazaras in Pakistan facing similar or comparable levels of persecution. The Hazaras are one of the main ethnic groups in Afghanistan that have a long history of persecution, primarily for their ethnic identity, but also more recently, primarily as one aspect of their persecution by ISIS for their Shia faith, Afghanistan being a Sunni majority country. Now, those fears, those historic fears of persecution against the Hazara have actually been re-enlivened and become more acute because the Taliban that have a long history of persecuting the Hazaras, there's a well-documented history of the Taliban conducting massacres against Hazara civilians in the 1990s when they were first in power. They've come back to power in Afghanistan, and the first thing they've done is to purge the Hazaras from both civilian administration, but also the military. And so therefore the Hazaras have no representation in the Taliban regime, a regime that has marginalized and persecuted them in the past. And therefore they cannot seek any form of protection from the regime in power against ISIS persecution that is attacking their schools, places of worship, but also their public transportation as they go from home to work and to school. So, and there are indications that the Taliban are actually looking the other way as ISIS is continuing its campaign of persecution against the Hazaras in Afghanistan.
Tell us a bit more about what you mean by persecution, and has that persecution or that treatment of Hazaras gotten worse over the years?
What I mean by persecution is that there are mass casualty terrorist attacks on schools that are run and mostly attended by Hazaras in Afghanistan, similar mass casualty bomb attacks against Hazara sports clubs, similar mass casualty terrorist bomb attacks against Hazaras on public transportation in their neighborhoods around the country. Hazaras are often singled out in places where they work and shot after they've been singled out from among other Afghans. And so that level of identified persecution has raised the alarm, including by the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., of a possible genocide in the offing in front of our eyes in Afghanistan against the Hazaras.
So how many Afghan refugees are there in Pakistan and elsewhere, and why are they struggling to get refugee status given what you're describing?
There are approximately 2 million Afghans in Pakistan. Some of them have been there for the past 3 to 4 decades. Others, like the ones that you saw in Kamal Haidar's report, are more recent people, including Hazaras and non-Hazaras who have been displaced for fear of the Taliban regime coming to power. And there are multiple reasons for why they have not received basic amenities, one of them being that resettlement countries, including Australia, the US, Canada, Germany, and other countries, the UK, for example, need to have a concerted solution together with UNHCR and Pakistan to resettle those Afghans and those Hazaras that qualify for resettlement, and to find solutions within Pakistan together with the Pakistani government and UNHCR for those Afghans and those Hazaras that have to remain in Pakistan. Having said that, the Pakistani economy is not in the best shape it can be, and so there is those fears that Pakistan's public system is being overwhelmed, and therefore some countries like Australia have pledged additional support to countries like Pakistan and Iran that are housing or hosting some of these displaced Afghans and Hazaras, but those efforts are piecemeal and need to be coordinated, including the resettlement of these Hazaras because they qualify based on the well-founded fear of persecution that they face to third countries.
Ahmed Shuja Jamal, co-author of The Decline and Fall of Republican Afghanistan. Thank you for your time.